Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Halfwatt Podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. So today we're going to talk about Who Moved My Cheese. And now the Who Moved My Cheese is a reference to a book that I read, I don't know, years and years and years ago. It was given to all of us, actually, when I worked at OHSU the first time by my previous boss. His name was Bill, and Bill passed it out because it had just been written and there were some changes happening at the institution that he thought warranted us taking the time on the clock to read this book. Excuse me. And it was pretty good. It was about a mouse and the cheese, and it's an allegory, and I liked it. It's not a bad book. And the amount of change that we were going through at the time was remarkably small, in my humble opinion. Given the changes that I'd personally gone through in my own life, I didn't really know exactly why the change that he was concerned about warranted, all this attention. But I'm certainly not opposed to reading the book or getting more information, and I appreciated it. And it's not the first time I've had a boss do that. I had one boss basically sit us all down and watch a specific movie that was important to him, so that we could get the team dynamic from it, and that was was good. I've worked under a lot of different management structures and different systems, and some are better than others. Some are corporatized. Some were more personal. I would love to tell you that I have enjoyed, which one was the best, which one was the worst. I can't sit here and really do that for you. But what I can tell you is that change is going to happen. There's no way around it. My former company had some pretty major changes happen a few weeks ago, and it affected several people. And I reached out to some of them and kind of talked to them. Some of them were former military, so I was able to say, well, we've been through this. If you're on a ship, for example, and they change out the captain. It's a big deal. It's a change of command ceremony. There's a lot that goes into that. You become very cohesive when you're on a ship, especially if it's a good ship and a good crew, or you're training for a specific task. You'll get better and better and better. If the XO is good and the zeros you work for are good, they'll train you and help you get motivated to do better. I've worked under excellent XOs. I've worked under horrifically terrible XOs. XOs are executive officers. They're the people who really crack the whip on a ship when you're out to sea. The CO at that point is letting the XO run most of what happens on the ship. He always makes the calls. He's always responsible for what happens on the ship because he's the one that's got the authority over everything that happens on it. But the XO is the one who's there to really shine, because this next command that he or she will go to will be their command. So the XO of whatever ship you're on is usually the bastard for all intents and purposes, although they can be good and bad, like I said. So the changes that I recommended to my friend was, I said, it's just like a change of command. You don't have any idea what's going to happen. And in this case, a very dynamic, personable leader was being swapped out with somebody they didn't know. The corporate office handled it. from what I can hear and gather, pretty poorly. It wasn't really rolled out the way that that it would have been wise to do such. And so you get kind of a culture shock and kind of a reaction. So, it prompted me to kind of give a lecture about that. And I talk about this subject quite often. So if I repeat certain aspects of it, you'll have to bear with me. I'm not young. But there are things that when you're in an industry, and it doesn't matter which one you're in, it just doesn't. When you're in an industry and things change, you can either roll with those punches and change with them and accept the reality, or you can dig your heels in and go, look, man, this sucks, and this is why. I certainly have gone both directions. There have been changes that I have just rolled with and said, yep, it'll be okay. Yep, it'll be okay. Yep, this is good. You know, when the whole world's on fire, it's a lot like the frog in the pot of water that doesn't realize, you know, that the heat's going up, and he's sitting in this pot of water, and it's just getting hotter and hotter. Pretty soon it kills him and boils the frog because he doesn't realize how hot it's getting. So there is a point in your own life that you need to kind of step back and do an evaluation of where you're at, what you're doing, to see if it's an appropriate level of, I don't know, I guess acceptance. And I think that in the case of what's happening, like with my former company, I think that, it's too early to tell what is good or what is bad. I mean, there's no reason, in my humble opinion, to run out the door because they've made a big change in leadership without seeing if the leader coming in may be the answer to the problem, maybe not the answer to the problem. Now, how the hell do we know? How do you know? You never really know until you've sat down and experienced what's happening. Conversely, some people need that change in their lives. And so there are some folks who sort of enjoy a regular change out, like doing routine things gets very dull to them. And so if there's a change happening, they kind of embrace that change. And I know that even in my job, there are certain people who love doing the same thing every single day. There are certain people who like the challenge of a change every day. I can go either way. There's times when I really need changes, and there's times when I need consistency and the same thing. I've learned in all my years of living that I can, there's a certain point in time when I just need to have some stability. I need to do the same thing. I'm actually in one of those kicks right now where I'm doing some really intensive graphic programming. And when you're programming on a system, the less interruptions you have, the more you can focus on the problem at hand, the better you get. Your actions become quicker, more efficient. You don't have to click the mouse as often. You don't have to answer the phone. You don't have to answer the radio. You don't have to grab your tools and go out and do something. I've got a good technician who's helping me through that. And so right now in my own life, having that stability, that same exact job every day until I get this particular project completed, is more important than the changes of, I've got to go out and troubleshoot this problem in this building, and there's a leak over here, and that made this wet, and it blew that up, and I got to go fix that. I've got somebody kind of running that interference who's actually enjoys that kind of life at the moment. Now, there may be a time when he goes, look, I got to sit down. I'm getting exhausted. You need to go out and do some work out in the field. And I will. That's just the way life is. But it is truly a set of balances. And so before you evaluate whether you're in the right space or whether the change is something that you can accept or you can't accept, you really do have to weigh on a set of scales, and just sort of imagine a set of scales. Is the change acceptable? Is that something you can live with? Is it something you need to experiment with and find out if you're happy with it? Is it something that's gonna drive you up a wall? Are you gonna come home and kick the dog? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna handle that? is in are those scales in balance? And I mean that in all sincerity. If you go to work and you're not happy at work, and you're not happy when you get home, and you're not happy with your life, the work may not be the problem, okay? You may be the problem, or acceptance of what's going on in your world may be the problem. So let's set that aside. Let's say that you're perfect and you don't have that problem. Now you go back to your job. Is the job worth it? Are you fairly compensated? Is your pay good? Are your benefits good? Do they have a nice vehicle? Do they buy you the tools you need? Do you have time to do the jobs? Do you get all the information you need? Well, I can tell you right now, you don't. That's just batshit. It just doesn't happen that way, okay? But you're looking at it going, I get most of what I need. I usually get the tools I need. Yeah, I pretty much have an all right rig. And, sometimes the fuel card works, sometimes it doesn't. I get it. There are always going to be those kinds of issues that occur. But overall, are you happy with it? Are you happy with what you do? Did you make the right career choice? Does this suck? Do you want to try to go into management? Do you want to become a salesperson? Do you want to engineer stuff? Do you is this what you want to do the rest of your life, or are you ready to change direction and go sail the world? All those things that are in the back of your head play havoc during change, and they can actually do you more harm than good. So I'm gonna kind of step back and go back to the Who Moved My Cheese book, and the reason that book was written, and the reason that it may be something you want to read. When you're coping with things in your life, if you don't cope with them well, your brain will automatically find a way to help it cope. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be anger. If you play sports, that's an outlet for a lot of folks. I know that, I ride my bike. That's a huge outlet for me, is just to go and jump on my bike and set, a high pace and get to my destination in a shorter time than I did the day before. That's my goal. And not get run over by a Mack truck. Or ride a horse and not have it curb stomp me. Those kind of things. Those are the physical things that I do to sort of help alleviate some of the stresses and some of the things that go on in my life. I look forward to that physical activity. That may be you. I know folks that play baseball and softball and soccer, and they're with their kids and they're coaching basketball, or they're coaching volleyball or something like that. That's an excellent way to shift channels from what you're doing. And even if you're in a company that has a team, like a baseball or softball team, then you can go and participate in that and build up that camaraderie with the folks you work with, if that's part of the dynamic. Well, on this set of scales, that's a positive for you in your direction. If going and doing a team building exercise with the folks you work with is something that makes you happy, gives you Michelle Kwan level joys inside, well, then that's a benefit, all right? So if you're not getting the exact pay you want, but you do like the folks you're dealing with, you like the folks you're working with, you can put up with the changes as they roll through, then there's no reason to make a radical departure or a radical change until you've really done that evaluation and you've given it some time. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes the change is just too much. It's just too much. I know that I know people who at my last company, when they swapped out the CEO, who knew that CEO and that person for like their entire time at that company. And so to shift leaders out like that unexpectedly was a huge hit to them emotionally, because there's a lot of if you've spent all your years with the same company, with the same boss, and then all of a sudden things change, it can detrimentally affect, make you feel less secure. And that opens up sort of a Pandora's box of, how much can I accept? How far can I go in this? Or am I still thinking clearly? The best thing I can tell you to do at these situations is not a damn thing. Don't change. Don't quit. Don't get mad. Do your best to work through them. Let the anger go in a safe place. I'm going to go figure out that. But work with what is happening to see if this is going to work out for you or not. And you cannot tell in the first week if it is or it isn't. It may take 6 months. It may take a year. It may take 6 years. How the hell do I know? This is your career. It's not mine. I know that one of the companies I was with, I really didn't want to leave at all. And I thought, I don't know what it would take to make me leave this company. And it wound up being a suicide that did it. And it was just too much for me. And some people who know the story go, well, that guy didn't commit suicide because of your company. And I understand that. But the overall effect of what happened was enough to warrant to sour the taste in my mouth and for me to go, I think it's time for me to make a change, and I decided to go back into management. In my own personal life, I've been through a suicide or two, so it's like I understand the effect that it has on people. I understand the effect that it had on me. I may have jumped ship there prematurely because I came predisposed because of my own traumatic experience with I had a mother that committed suicide. So it was a very difficult thing to accept and to deal with, and it was a sort of a painful experience that didn't just happen once. It sort of happened over a 3 or 4 year period when all of the details sort of came out. And so this was a long and involved kind of a wound that just kept getting worse and worse until I finally, got about 80% of the story. And it was just like, what the hell happened here? Why did you handle it that way? And so when it happened again and again, I just went, I don't think I need this particular shit going on in my life. I think I need to just kind of not do this anymore. This isn't fun. My scales were out of balance. It became not fun. In some cases, like when I was in the military, if they switch out XO or CO or even your direct officers, there's nothing you can do about it. There's very little that you can do. You can't just jump up and down and say, I hate this place, I got to get out. And you can, trust me, if you try hard enough, you can get off just about anything. But for the most part, the military is one of those places where you wind up accepting, how do I put this nicely? You just wind up accepting some real shitty people, no matter what you do. There's just not a whole lot you can do. And I've said this before, but if you're on a 563-foot ship, that's as far as you can get away from some of the people you detest. That's it. There's just no other place to go. And so the military has a way of working through those issues with people, and they really are good at it. I would guess because of their experiences and with cultures where it wasn't handled quite right. Hint fragging. But I have to appreciate my time in the military, my time in the Navy, because, there were people I couldn't stand. There were officers and zeros that I really, to this day, use as I use one of them as a comparison. So if you and I run into each other and you start chewing on my ass, which can happen from time to time, if I literally will compare every ass chewing I've ever received from anybody, including my own parents, up against this lieutenant commander I worked for. And he's a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, or 100 if you want to go to that degree. And I have yet to have anybody surpass maybe a 6.5 as far as ass chewings go. I've in the rest of my life, nobody has come near the level that this guy not just obtained, but obtained on a regular basis. If you've known me and we get to know each other, I'll tell you the story if you want to hear it. It is not pretty. It was really not pretty. And this guy was out of his mind. And we knew that, but because of the way that the structure is, there's really nothing you could do. And so I just eventually said, this isn't going to work out for us. One of the two of us is going to go over the side, and I don't know which it's going to be. So it'd probably be best if I just get the hell off this boat before we figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. I took another command and was able to shift laterally and just go to a place where there were decent people. And I was able to. But looking back at all that, even if I had the book "Who Moved My Cheese," even if I'd had all of the experiences that I have now, if I was back in that same exact position at almost 60 years old, looking at that same position, I now know how I would have dealt with it, and I wouldn't have left. I would have used the tools that the Navy made available to recognize that this person was not, was out of control. And now that I know what those tools are, and I know how to approach, the XO or the CO and say, hey, we got an issue here, right? This guy almost killed me. I mean, literally. If I've told you the story, you already know which one it is. So, his inability to command and lead us put my life directly at risk more than once, but in one case it was traumatic and very serious. So, now that I can look back with 20/20 hindsight, I know how I should have dealt with it. But as a 25-year-old, a 24, 25-year-old guy was running a whole division of people. I had no idea how to deal with it. It was like I was overwhelmed with stuff. And therein lies part of the problem, at least with me personally, is that I'll take on all these different duties and assignments, even though I know that I'm overwhelmed. And all I do is wind up just time sharing and trying to keep as many of these projects afloat as I can. And so since I'm not verbally, pitching a fit about it, they just say, well, hell, he can take more. He can take more. And pretty soon the camel's back breaks. And that's essentially what happened there. Had I, properly said, hey, look, the military has this entire way of dealing with leadership and command structure. You're not following it here. I had every right to bring that point up and to deal with it, but I wasn't in my right mind. So when these changes and these things occur to you in your daily work life, especially if you're 10 years into it and you've made the commitment to school, you've got your license, now you're out there doing it. And so you're 2-3 years past your license. So you've been in this job now for 6-7 years total. With how many ever companies you've been in, you've kind of seen the good and the bad. And when your company, if it happens to start changing and it goes good, bad, or ugly, now you start looking on, well, hold on, maybe leaving here is a better idea. Maybe the grass is greener, at another company. Sure. I mean, yeah, I certainly can't sit here in front of this microphone and say, gosh, I stay with the same company, since I came out of the military in 1991. That's hog's snot. I have been to 6 companies now. And I've yet to have a continuous employment with one company for more than, at this point, 12 years. And that was split. So my current job up on the hill, I had 10 and a half years, and I've got now 2 back in it. So, 12 and a half years. That's the longest job I've ever had, other than teaching, which I've been teaching for over 10 continuous. So I'm happy, I'm proud, I'm glad I finally was able to put some years under my belt. But, working for contractors and spending 4 years here and 4 years there and 3.5 years there and 4 years here, I look back at it and I go, was it really worth the shifting around? Was it the right course of action? Did I, was I a part of the problem? Or was the company a part of the problem? Could I have handled this differently or better? Yeah, I absolutely could have. Absolutely. On almost every single occasion, it could have been handled better and wiser. And that's why I wanted to talk to you guys and gals today, because this is precisely what I think you probably should hear. I've known people who have stayed at the same company for almost their entire career. They've rolled with every change that the company's made. They've accepted them. They're happy there. They become pillars of how that company operates. And I have an enormous amount of respect for folks who are able to roll with those changes and not let them affect them to the point where they have to leave. Now, that's one scale. That's one side of the balance here. I also respect people who just go, look, this is unacceptable to me. This is just unacceptable. When you look at what your company is requiring of you, or how you're supposed to work, or do you have the right tools or the right equipment or the right time or the right blankety blank to do your gig, that is where this decision ultimately on whether you want to stay or go resides. It really does. If your home, personal life, family life is affected by your work, that's something that you need to evaluate. Now, I'm going to say that again. If your husband or wife, is scratching their head going, man, I don't think this is the gig for you. Okay. I don't know. You don't look happy when you come home. That would be a red flag. Now, if your relationship with that person isn't good anyway, well, okay, then let's not, look at your company and say, well, it's my company's fault that I'm not getting along with my better half. Come on, that's not accurate. So, but if you have a great relationship with your loved one, and they're telling you, I mean, something's out of whack, like you need to go figure this out. There's EAP. There's counseling sessions. Every company has to have those available to you. Every company, right? So you have every right to go, look, I'm going to use my EAP and I'm going to go sit in front of a counselor or over the phone or however they do it today and spill my guts. I would highly recommend, before you make a life-altering change, to consider that. Okay. Now, if you're anti-counselor, I can't help you. You're not the smartest, not the brightest bulb in the marquee, in my humble opinion, but whatever. I have had a lot of counseling in my life, and I'm telling you that it was worth every penny of it, including some bad counseling that I got in the very beginning of my first marriage that probably cost me more than it's worth. But I have to ultimately sit back and go, now that I realize it, I know what they were trying to do. I don't necessarily agree with the tactics. But for the most part, every single counselor I've dealt with has been a help to me personally, and I've used them. So you have that option as an employee. You can You can pull the counseling card option and say, you can also talk to your manager. The ability to openly discuss with your supervisor or manager the way you perceive what is going on is a necessity. If you don't have that, if you do not have the ability to communicate to your manager or your supervisor the problems that you are having in the field, or they're poo-pooing it or sloughing it off, then the scales are now tipping into the favor of leaving. Okay? So, for those who are managers who happen to listen to this podcast, I mean that with all the sincerity I can muster. If you don't provide a neutral environment, a place for your employees to come and talk to you, or you don't bring in another manager or an HR person to help mitigate those, you're a fool. You're an absolute fool. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You're not in the right position, in my humble opinion. So consider that, okay? An employee is not a slave. They're not a tool that you use and throw away. They're a human resource. They're a human being that you are coaching and working with to make them as good an asset as they can be. By doing that, they will make you money, which is the name of the game if you're on the management side of the house, right? You can't do that if you're pushing people away, or you're incommunicative, or you suck. All right, you just can't do that. So I've worked for some fantastic managers that will absolutely sit down and listen and provide a neutral environment. They don't like to be pushed or cajoled, and I understand that, but they will open up and go, yeah, man, you're right. This sucks. I also will expect them to close me like you would on a sales call. Well, we've got all this, are you feel comfortable with that? Is that going to help keep you here or whatever? I'm talking sort of around the 800-pound gorilla, but you see what I'm talking about. So you should be able to go through your chain of command back up to your managers and be able to have an open and frank discussion with them without them getting their little feelings hurt. Now, if your manager's constantly getting their feelings hurt, or they're making you feel like crap every time you open up your mouth, you may very well need to make a change. The scales would tip, in my humble opinion, the scales would tip against staying, because this is bat squeeze. You don't have the right person in the right position. Now, let's suppose that doesn't happen and you do have a manager that cares. Then you should be able to throw your wares on the table and say, look, this is the problem I'm having. The manager should also look at those and come back and go, look, I appreciate that, but I don't agree with you. Now, just because they don't agree doesn't mean they're right. Doesn't mean you're right. It means there's a difference of opinion. And so if I was a salesperson and I go to close you on a sales gig, I'd say, oh man, looks like you like this thing. Did you want it in silver or blue? There's my close. Wait a minute. I wasn't going to get either one. I haven't decided to get this thing yet. Don't try to close me early. Uh-oh. Now we've got a problem. Each time there's an issue, that's called an objection. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you liked it. I just knew that we were down to the silver or blue model. No, I don't know if I like it. Well, what's the objection with it? Well, gosh, it doesn't have this doodad in it. Oh, okay. So if I have the doodad added, which we'll do, silver or blue, which one is it? Bam, I've just closed. So you can expect when you're dealing with a manager to have the same exact thing. Hey, he's trying or she's trying to represent the company, and the company is there to obviously make money. Now, the company is not going to make money because you're out beating old ladies over the head and taking their purses. That's not the way the company makes money. The company makes money doing what you're good at, and they'll reap a profit off that. And I get it. Sometimes managers remember that. Sometimes they don't. So it's almost, essential for me when I'm in those positions to look back at somebody and go, you do know what we do here, right? Like we do, we're an access control company, and that's what we install, right? I mean, we're all on the same page. We're not changing that up. Okay. But do expect when you sit down with a manager that you're going to get the corporate line, so to speak. And you should know that going in and not, get yourself all twisted in knots over that. That's just the way it's going to be. Once again, go back to those scales. Is this acceptable to you? Is what the person told you, the manager or the chain of command told you? Are you accepting that? Is it good, bad? Does it still make you mad? Are you still pissed off? You want to go somewhere else? Is that change? Is that what you need? Maybe the change could be within the company. Maybe, look, I've done this work for 7 years. I can't stand it. I want to go and do this work. And that's a necessity. That has to happen. I have to have a change of scenery. I can't sit here and click a mouse anymore. I have to go out in the field and, I don't know, stick my finger in a light socket. So help me out. Those could be options that you could take. Either way, it's going to still boil down to you. You are still going to be the variable in the equation of whether you can or cannot accept what's happening. And so it all boils back down to you and your feelings and your guts. If your guts don't feel right, if every time you come through the door or you start up your rig, you feel like this is just overwhelming, like I have a pain in my chest, I can't stand this, then yeah, you may consider looking at something that may make you happy. But if it's something that's just sort of, I've got to work out these issues and I think I'll be okay, well, then it's probably going to be okay, right? Because ultimately, you have to accept what's going on. If you know that you're the frog in the pot of water and the pot is hot, but it's not getting any hotter, then you may want to consider figuring out what's making the pot hot and if that's something that you can control. If it's moving too fast and the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence, then yeah, you may have to leave. I'm here to tell you that as a guy who's changed companies quite often, the grass does look greener on the other side. And I have found greener pastures on the other side of the fence and other issues and other problems and other situations, things that I wasn't aware of. At least in some of the companies I worked for, I knew what I was dealing with. I knew where the landmines were. I knew what the pitfalls were. I knew that I could, some of these I could deal with and some of these I could not. Going to a new company or going to a change could be more than you're willing to accept. Okay, it could be way out of your comfort zone, and or as we like to say, it could be way over your skis. So bear that in mind. And that's where a counselor through an EAP session, I think you get 6 sessions or something like that with most companies, could help you go, you may have some personal things going on in your life that a changing companies may not be the right thing to do now. You may want to look 6 months down the road and reevaluate that. Okay? Like if you're pregnant or your wife is pregnant or something like that, may not be a good time to go changing companies. You may have to just suck it up, buttercup, and deal with what you've got. So trying to distance your emotions from the situation and to look at the situation from above, like the 1,000-foot view, and maybe go, let me grab a piece of paper. Let me put the pros on one side, the cons on the other, and write down the things that I like about this place and things I don't like about this things, or things I like about this person, things I don't like about this person. And let me look at those. And those little exercises, as dumb as they sound, are quintessential in understanding yourself. Because ultimately, this is an exercise in understanding where you are at, not where the company's at. Okay? And I mean that in all sincerity. The if a company changes dramatically or things change within that company dramatically, this is an organization that you volunteered to become a part of and has paid bills for you for X amount of years or months. So it's probably, unless they want you to leave, they're probably happy with the work that you're doing. So that part you've already solved. Everybody's happy with this quiescence that exists now. But, they've changed something. Something's been moved. Something's not right. And now you need to figure out whether that change is something that you can accept or you can't accept. So once again, now it's back on you. And I'm certainly not here to defend companies. Trust me, kids, that's not what I'm here to do. I'm about to change the tune here in about 30 seconds. So all I'm saying is that you as the individual who's listening to this, who's working for a company, if you're happy or you're not happy, you need to evaluate those things. Make sure that you're not throwing personal bias into it, and that you have a clear head when you're thinking about it, and that you really have tried to affect the change or affect the leadership to say, hey, this I feel this way, or I think this way, or this is what I sense. Where, show me where I'm wrong here. And I have definitely felt like when I left a couple companies that I don't know how this company is going to survive when I leave. Like I felt like I had somehow contributed this much to it that if I walk out the door, it's going to just fold up and disappear. That's not going to happen. Okay. That's not going to happen. You're not that important to a company that the whole thing's just going to quit and fall down, and unless it's a one-man company. But you're not that important that's going to happen. You may affect their bottom dollar. You may affect their relationships with their customers and things like that. But all that stuff in time works its way out, and eventually, the memory of most people is very short, and the company will survive without you. It just will. So those are the points I wanted to bring up to, if you're in this particular situation, to look at. So if you're in a situation where you don't feel comfortable, you should be able to bring it up to your managers, see a counselor if that's what you need to. Make sure that your better halves at home are in agreement or not in agreement. Are they, because like my wife can tell me exactly what's going on in my head. There's no mystery there at all. And so I need her to help, diagnose myself, because I could very easily get tunnel vision, just like when I'm troubleshooting something. If I've concentrated so much on this one thing as the problem, and I realize it, then I immediately grab Alan or Chris or somebody, one of my workmates, and go, let me run this problem by you because I've gotten tunnel vision on it. You can easily get tunnel vision in your company during change because it's a safe place for you to be pissed off. So make sure that that's not happening. And reevaluate whether the company is treating you and your function within it properly. Now, here's where I'm going to flip the script a little bit. I've mentioned this probably half a dozen or a dozen times on all my recordings, is that you cannot be responsible for something you have no authority over. I'm going to say that again. You cannot be held responsible for something that you do not have the authority over. If you're on a job, it takes 8 hours to do that job, and you're by yourself, and you have 4 hours. That is not enough time to complete the job. Just that simple. That's just simple mathematics. I have worked for companies and managers that if it took 2 people 8 hours to do the job, well, then one person should be able to do the job in 8 hours. And I would look at the managers that said that and I'd go, I don't have a college degree, and even I can do math. So what the hell do you mean? Well, you know what I'm saying. They could just work harder. No. Okay? Stop. If it took 2 people 8 hours, it's 16 man hours. Okay? If I'm going to do it by myself, it's going to take 16 man hours. How many days is that? Let's all do math, kids. So it's not uncommon for sometimes for managers, especially people who are not necessarily connecting with what you do in the field, to make these assumptions on what's going on without having any clue as to what really happens. And I'll give you a for example. If I send a technician out and I expect them to do this job in 4 hours, and they spend 3 hours trying to get in the room because no one's got the key, then when the technician finally does get in the room, that's when the 4 hours begins. Not when they showed up, but when they got in the room. So if 4 hours later I'm going, why are you not done with this job? And the tech says, I just got in the room. Well, I needed to know that information 4 hours ago to help you figure out how to get in the room. So this is a two-way street. If you're not communicating back, or maybe I was in one of 1,000 meetings and I wasn't able to keep up with it, but you did contact me, that's on me. That's on me as a manager. All right. So you show up, the door's locked, you can't get access. You try to reach out, no one's there to answer. You do your best to get the key. Fine. Then, I always had a kind of a backup plan, because in any service company, the 2 people you never want to piss off are your dispatcher and your parts person. So I would always call back my dispatcher and go, look, this ain't working. No one's got the key. I don't know when we're going to get it. They know when they're going to get a hold of me. Give me something else to do. Give me something else to chomp on, or I'm going to go drink coffee at Starbucks until you guys unscrew the situation. So either way, if a manager is putting you in a position where it's clear that they don't have a clue as to what's going on, your reaction back is what's going to make or break the deal with the manager. And there's almost some acting that you may need to consider, because I've had managers look at me and go, well, why didn't the job get done? And I've just looked up at them and go, are you stupid? Well, that's probably not the correct answer. They're not stupid, all right? But the question is stupid. The premise is stupid. Well, how can they get the job done? Well, I guarantee you, if they're my people and they didn't get the job done, there's a good reason. And if I didn't share with you that reason, you didn't have a need to know, because it wasn't your job. It's my job to know. So good managers will not necessarily put every single problem that happens with a technician in the field above them, to the people above them. There's a limit to how much information I'm going to share above me with people who have less of a clue than I have if I'm not out in the field doing the job. So if you've got a manager that just shares all that stuff all the time, or doesn't give a rip, and then is holding you accountable, you've got a problem. There's the scales now change. Now you can come back to the manager and go, I don't know exactly what's going on in your head, but I'm going to lay this out for you in very easy to understand small bites, so that you don't choke on anything as I go through this. And lay all those things out. Without the emotion, without the upsetness, just lay them out factually. If the manager comes back and has, a reaction or a response that you find abhorrent, then once again, the scales are out of balance. It might be at that point a good time to go, okay, I have a set of scales I'm weighing here, all right? You're removing the reason for me to stay here and play in the sandbox with you. Put some back in. Get some balance back into what you're doing. You're being upset, or the pressure that you're getting from the corporate monsters above you has no relative bearing on how I do what I do every single day. And because you think you need this job to get done, and you think I'm going to work over the weekend to do it when I have plans, you can pack sand, okay? So we need to understand that my time is as important as the money I bring home. And there's times when I've taken pay cuts because I don't give a shit about the money. It's the time, because that's something I can never get back. And it's something you can never get back. If you've got a newborn, or you've got a kid that you've made plans with, or you've got a wife or a husband that you're going to go and do something, and to keep giving up that time to bail out a manager who can't seem to fathom reality, that sets the scales off again. Okay? So make sure that you're not in a toxic situation where someone is basically using a lever to force you to do something that you know is unethical or unrealistic in your own world. And you should never, ever feel bad about taking that personal time that you need and doing what's important to you, because you get one shot through this world, kids. One. That's it. Once it's gone, it's gone. No one in their 80s or 70s looks back and goes, God, you know what I really wish I had done was spend more time working. Okay? I mean, that just isn't true. Now, if you're a millionaire and you love shoveling money in the bank, okay, well, this isn't the podcast for you. But the rest of us who actually are working stiffs, who want to do a quality job, want to get whatever, done in a timely fashion, that's not the way we work. We want to wire it correctly. We want to program it correctly. We want to hang it on the wall correctly. We want to do it the way the code says to do it. We want to do it the way that it makes us feel good inside. I don't want to slap crap on the wall with drywall screws and haphazardly pull the wire and, terminate it with junk, and you know what I'm saying? Like I want a quality widget installation. I don't want crap. I don't want to go out and fix something and haphazardly slap the paperwork together and throw it back at the client and run out the door and go do another one because I can get 12 jobs done in a day. That's just not me. It's probably not you either. So that balance is critical. So for managers who are managing people, you should be coaching people and not managing. And I mean that. And I've said this before a couple of times. Managing is a lot like coping. I manage, if I have cancer, I'm managing my cancer. I'm coping with cancer. I could use the terms, either way I could use those terms. Well, I managed to blow the tire on my car today. There you go. So there's a misnomer that as a manager that you're not really you're just there to push dollars and to make sure that that all the spreadsheets line up and all the nuts and bolts behind the scenes that most technicians never see, like all that stuff is happening. If all that stuff is happening because it has to justify what's going on in the field, but the work in the field is what should be there should be represented by the paperwork. Let me see if I can put this right. If I have to sit down with my manager and go, look, this is the way that you can increase your bonus, or I can put pressure on those technicians to do more work or do more inspections or do more whatever to get more productivity out of them so that I look better to my stockholders. How you sell that to the technicians is on you, boo. If it's done right, the technician will work hard because A, they want to, or B, they may get some incentive if they do. But if there's no incentive or they don't want to, now you're wedging with a different tactic. And that tactic is going to fail at some point. It's not a long-term fix. Having been in companies where because now everything's all being bought up by conglomerates. So you've got these big shell, huge corporations with managers and regional managers and district managers who have these expectations that they foist upon a branch with very little, in my humble opinion. Now, I could totally be wrong, but you're welcome to email us and tell us that that's the case. But with very little understanding of the customer base, how we do, what our technicians are all about, just demand a level of productivity out of them that they may not be capable of doing. If there's no feedback mechanism to go back to the corporate overlords who are telling you stuff like this, then you're going to wind up in a position I was in my last company where I just looked up and said, we're done. This is impossible. This is an impossible thing for me. I don't know. You have wrung this washcloth as dry as it can get. And that's exactly what happened. I just went, no, this isn't doable anymore. This isn't fun. The scales are out of balance. And I know some managers who can persist in that particular philosophy and slowly but surely develop all the right tools and take the time to painstakingly piece together a machine, because they're coaching, not managing, to put together a team that can help mitigate that. That takes years, plural, years of doing. Sometimes it's just not for me to do. So in my own world, I just went, no, I don't want, I already spent years putting this together. And then we invited somebody to the party who kicked all the party favors over, popped all the balloons, changed all the dynamic of the party here. And now I have to redo this party in the way they want to see it, with their ideas. And no one ever came to me and said, hey, these are their ideas and this is what we're going to do. It was just like, do this. Okay, well, I was in the military, so I get that. I've had orders handed to me that I had to hand to my guys, and I've looked at them and gone, shrugged my shoulders and go, guess what we're going to do today? We're going to go do this, because that's the way the command is. But in the military, that's expected. In the civilian world, that's a really, really, really tough sell. That's a real tough sell. So, good managers, and I worked for an excellent manager at my last company. He was able to look at what the corporate people wanted, look at what was going on in the field, and he was able to direct and to make all of the appropriate changes, and be successful at it. I have to say, Charles was very successful at it. He was the hardest working person I know. That guy was there in the office before I showed up and there long after I left, sometimes 6-7 days a week. If that's, and clearly him and his wife have that relationship where he can spend all that time doing that, man, I am super proud. I don't have that. Like, that just doesn't work for me. It just isn't, I can't give that much of my life to that way of living. So it's just not my cup of tea. But it doesn't mean that there's not somebody who stepped in my place who could do that, or a couple of people to handle all those things. So I'm certainly not here to say, well, it can be done, so it can never be done. Nah, it's bullshit. There's lots of people with skill sets out there, and that could be you. You could be the manager that your company is looking for. Hint, hint. If you have those skill sets, if that drives you, if that makes you feel happy inside, like you get that Michelle Kwan level of happiness because you can truly thrive in situations like that, well, then you should probably consider moving into a supervisory management role and exercising that, because I certainly know of quite a few people who have moved into those roles who are very good at it. And just because it's not something that I want to do doesn't mean it's a bad gig, and doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be done. So when a big change like this happens, this might be the change that you need to step up and take on a different set of responsibilities and become a part of the team that helps lead and coach and foster technicians or inspectors or whatever it is whatever widgets you build there. So in summation here, all I'm trying to say is that in this industry, in our industry, the consolidation of smaller companies into bigger companies with their own ideas on how money gets spent and how money moves and how profits are to be made and how things are supposed to run can become impersonal. So if you are working for a company where you feel like you're a dynamic part of the team and there's a personal connection, it doesn't mean that needs to change because, a corporate entity purchases you or comes in and changes the way things work. They may have ideas and goals or processes and procedures that they've used elsewhere that work great. You don't know. You just don't know. But if you already have made up your mind that this sucks and that it's not going to work out and that I hate you in your ass face, it won't work. It won't. There's no way that can be overcome. So please take a step back from the precipice when change like this happens. Do a 1,000-foot view on what's going on. Evaluate where you're at. Evaluate where the company's at. Don't make any rapid changes. Don't run out the door and say, "It's it. You brought in a new person here. I hate you in your ass face. I'm going to run down the street to the competition." Do some careful analysis because time is on your side. So there's no reason to make any of these huge changes. And when you do go back and evaluate, see, are you ready to throw your hat in the ring and help run a company like this? If that's your expertise or that's what you went to college for that, then by God, that's what you should probably do. If you just want to stay out in the field and never be screwed with again, I get it. Then go out in the field and never get screwed with again. If you're a manager and you're managing people and changes like this happen, it is quintessential that you learn about your people and what it takes to coach them. And please don't manage. Please coach. Please develop a team and coach your people so that they understand how they're affecting the bottom dollar. Make them a part of it, and they will almost always give you everything they've got to give you. All they want to do is be recognized, be paid and compensated fairly, have good benefits for what they do, keep them happy, give them tech appreciations, do stuff like that, and you will maintain a high level of job satisfaction in their eyes. And I'm going to leave you with this. I was on a command one time, and one of the master chiefs. Now, if you're not in the Navy, we're not in the Navy. The highest enlisted rank is called the Command Master Chief of the Navy, which is an E10. But almost all the other master chiefs below that are E9s. So the highest enlisted rank you're ever going to get to is going to be an E9 if you don't go to become an officer. So master chiefs are revered mostly. They are old salty dogs that have spent their entire lives in service to the country and service to the Navy. And they literally put the Navy before almost anything else. So I have met dozens and dozens of master chiefs, and I can tell you that I adored most of them. Most of them were just unbelievably good people, and senior chiefs too, which is the next rank down below, the E8. I met an E9 who had so many ribbons on his uniform that he had to get a chit and an extension to be able to wear all of his hash marks on his sleeve up past his elbow. That was it broke the uniform code, so he had to carry a little chit with him, which was a an excuse or an authorization to say, yes, your gold hash marks, he was not a very tall guy. His gold hash marks could go past his elbow. Never forget this guy's name was Beetle. And he had, at the time I knew him, almost 40 years in. And so I asked him, I said, man, what's the biggest change that you've seen in all your time in? He was a fire controlman. And he goes, air conditioning. Air conditioning changed the Navy. He said, we used to just have air conditioning in certain spaces, and now the whole ship's air conditioned. So no one goes outside and smokes and hangs out in the flight deck. The engineers don't know the Twidgets don't know the cooks don't know the bosun mates, and nobody knows anybody else. He goes, that's been the biggest change. He goes, at night was when we would all go out on the fantail and cool off because it was so damn hot in these older ships. He goes, so the level of camaraderie changed when air conditioning went throughout the whole ship. I was stunned by that answer. And I said, what? And he was our command master chief. I said, what? He basically, I was asking him, like, besides the job he did, what is his major job as a command master chief on the ship? Because I was kind of interested. And he goes, oh, it's really simple. It's morale. It's morale. I have the ability to walk in and sit down with the captain at almost any time. He goes, I can sit down with the captain of this ship and say, you've got a problem. So I am the gatekeeper of how the crew is feeling and what they're sensing. And I can go straight to the man who can change that, who can turn around and look at the XO and say, stop doing this or do this. And I said, no kidding. He goes, yeah. He goes, the reason command master chiefs exist is that we're the liaison between the crew and the captain, flat out. I am that person. And he goes, so the better I am at my job, the better the crew is, the happier everybody is. So it would almost behoove a company to consider having a liaison that could talk to the upper corporate structure, whatever that is. And in many cases, it seems to be kind of lifeless in some of the experiences I've had, that is able to go back down and understand what's happening in the field, because that component is what's missing. The people in the field want to do the best they can do. They want to be, like I said, compensated fairly. They want the right tools. They want the right time. They want, job preps, all those things. The people up above want the beans. And it seems almost like they don't give a damn about what's happening in the field as long as those beans come in. And I was once working for a company, and the owner of the company said, we're in this business to make money, not to do what we did, which I'm not going to talk about. And I raised my hand. I was just out of the military. I raised my hand and I said, so that means if we're just in this business to make money, then I could just like kick old ladies and steal their purses, right? I mean, what the hell's the difference? I mean, if all we're in this for is to make money, then I can go sell crack, right? I mean, that's making money, isn't it? Isn't that what you want? No, you know what I mean. No, man, I don't know what you mean. I don't know why you would open up your pie hole and say something so stupid. I didn't say that, but I did say, no, I don't know what you mean. I don't know why you would say something like that to these people. These people do a job for you. That is the most important thing. If we do that job at 100% and we do it well, that will make you money. True? And he goes, yeah, but. And I said, stop the buts. Stop pivoting on the but here. Okay? That's what we do. If we do what we do, if we go out and fix widgets, and we fix widgets very well, then if the better we fix widgets, the more money you make, the more efficient we become. You're telling us that it doesn't matter how we fix widgets, just as long as we bring those dollars through the door. And that is a morale kick in the teeth. And it was. It was a kick in the teeth. And so I wish that I could reach up into some of the corporate level of some of the people I've dealt with on high corporate levels and just shake them to their foundation And there's a book written by a guy named Simon Sneak. Now, Doug Bond, a guy I used to work with, asked me to read this book, and I did. And it was a absolute game changer. It's called Leaders Eat Last. And I will wholeheartedly endorse that book, Leaders Eat Last. If you're in management and you have not read this book, shame on you. Okay? And it will tell you exactly what I just told you. You need to get down on the gut level and see how your business makes money, what it does. And don't tell me you already know, because you don't. If you knew, you would be down there coaching and not coping.
Thanks for listening to the Half-Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half-Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.